10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of our weekly IPL chat here on the India on Cricket 8 podcast. I'm your host, Nikesh Regani, alongside Megha Sinha, and we're finally into the closing stages of the group phase of this season's competition. It's basically been going on for what feels like about 6 to 8 months, and yet only one side is currently mathematically guaranteed a playoff spot, which is quite frankly bonkers, but this is the IPL. KKR, of course, they're top of the table. They sit on 19 points after that washout against the Gujarat Titans. Gujarat themselves are out of the competition despite making the final in the last 2 seasons, winning it, of course, a couple of years ago. They're out along with Mumbai and Punjab, Mumbai probably being the shock one out of those 3. Rajasthan, meanwhile, they sit in second on 16 points in the playoffs very soon, although they seem to have been stuck on 16 points for quite some time now. Beneath them, it's all to play for, with 5 sides technically fighting out for the remaining 2 spots. I guess, Megha, this is what the fans crave, isn't it? A bit of drama towards the end of the season.
Absolutely. And at least right now, we are clear that the 3 teams that are out, one has qualified. Up until the previous week, even after 50 matches, there was not one team that was sure of making it to the playoffs and not one team that had already crashed out. So it is going down to the wire. We might not have had as many close matches as we would have wanted, but at least in terms of qualification, that race is still pretty riveting and pretty close. Royal Challengers Bangalore are still in with a chance. After that run of 6 consecutive losses, one would have ruled them out, because that also meant that in 8 matches, they had won just 1. But here they are still in it, and their net run rate also pretty healthy. But talking about the Rajasthan Royals, we were expecting them to fumble at some point, but that it has come so close to the end of the qualification stage, with them having lost 3 matches back to back, one of them by just 1 run. So back then, they might not have thought much about it, but now when there's still a mathematical possibility of them not making it to the playoffs, in that scenario, of course, they would be thinking about that loss, that 1-run loss. But otherwise as well, just that consistency that's been missing, and those 3 back-to-back losses might just do something to the momentum, to the confidence, like back-to-back wins. Yeah.
No Josh Buttler. Josh Butler's going home. He's coming back here to England to captain England in that T20 series against Pakistan. That has got to be a huge blow, not just Josh Buttler, the player, which will be a massive miss, but the aura that he brings to a side, the fear that he instills in opposition bowlers, that's not going to be there anymore at the top of the order. So they're going to have to go with something different. Yes, they've got Jaiswal up there to hopefully continue and score some runs, particularly from an Indian point of view before that T20 World Cup. Just carry on some good form. But, you miss a player like Josh Buttler, and all of a sudden other sides start feeling that they've got an opportunity every time they come up against you. So, it's not done and dusted for Rajasthan. I mean, I joked there about them being on 16 points for quite some time, but it's been like well over a week, hasn't it? Those 3 matches that they lost in a row since then, since they chalked up 16. So, it's probably they've just done enough, just judging by what other sides have to do. I mean, there's sides like Bangalore and Delhi in particular who are having to rely massively on other results. And that's their issue of sort of starting so poorly this season, and Bangalore then going on that run of 5 straight wins. Let's start with RCB then, because it seems as though there's a real push, probably just because of Virat Kohli, from the general wider public for RCB to make a run and get into those playoffs. I mean, as an RCB fan, if you're somebody who's supported RCB all these years, you must be pretty good at maths, right? You're having to get your calculator out almost every year to see how it is still possible for RCB to make the playoffs towards the end of the group stages, because they always leave it quite late. They often miss out. Yes, they have made it a couple of times recently, but it's just it's drama of the highest quality, yes. But it's being led almost single-handedly by one man, Virat Kohli, who's orange cap holder, that innings of 92 from 47, once again just underlying his credentials.
Absolutely. And all the conversations around his strike rate, at least for now, have been put to rest because there was a lot of conversations that were happening. And maybe rightly so, because last year as well, last season as well, in that post power play phase, he would slow down, particularly against the spinners. And this time around as well, for the first half, that continued happening, a strike rate of around 133. But then, since the criticisms became louder and Virat Kohli took it to heart, we've seen a different player altogether. And later, of course, there was this post-match interview where Virat was livid, and Virat obviously made it clear what he thought about people in the boxes. But post that, he's obviously mellowed down with his bites as well, and he's mentioned that he's not somebody who wouldn't make changes to his game. He would acknowledge the issues and he would make those changes to get better as a player. And it's there for everyone to see. It's been a huge part of why RCB have strung together those five back-to-back wins, because Dinesh Karthik, who was a crucial cog in the first half of the season, in the last five matches, he hasn't made as much contributions. Fab du Plessis has been obviously providing Fury start up front, but Virat Kohli has been the main contributor, and Rajat Patidar as well. After that England series where he was dropped, he couldn't get a lot of runs, and then he carried that slump into the IPL. But in the last five games, he's been making those contributions. Green as well stepping up because he too didn't have a great start to the season, but got some form by his side. Will Jacks has been contributing. Obviously, the services of some of these players, RCB will not have going ahead. And Mohammad Siraj dropped for a game. Since then, he's obviously managed some movement up front. Things have been going well on that front. And Swapnil Singh, probably RCB's good luck, because since the time he's begun featuring in the 11. They've not lost any game, and he's been doing well for them as well. He's been given that first over two, and otherwise as well in the middle overs, he's been delivering the goods for the team, including that game against PBKS. So all in all, it's clicking for RCB finally.
It is, but will it be too little, too late? Of course, they've got that game against CSK, their final one
Yeah.
in the group stages. Straight shootout, it could be, depending on other results, and if they're to go in RCB's favour along the way, they could still be in with a chance. I mean, it's there's a lot of parallels, and I know I sometimes use the football comparisons quite a bit, but for those in India, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who are following the English Premier League football, that's going down to the wire. I mean, it all depends on a match tonight between Manchester City and Tottenham as to whether or not Arsenal have got a realistic chance. But regardless of that result, they still will have a chance going to that final game. But they'll obviously be relying on Man City to lose to West Ham and themselves to beat Everton. But all getting very close, and it's all kind of lined up. The stars have lined up in the football in the English Premier League. They seem to be lining up for RCB too. And look, Kohli's never won this, has he? It's one of the few trophies that he's not won. He's not going to move franchise. He's always going to be with RCB. He's already said that. So his entire IPL career kind of hinges on RCB's success. If he's to pick up that trophy, he's done all he can. It's good to see him relaxed as well, because we see the intense Kohli, and we saw him when he was captain of India, and that extra intensity he brings. He's still got that. He's still got the fight, obviously, and he's still scoring bucket loads of runs. But it was a great interaction between himself and Ishant Sharma in that match against Delhi Capitals. Obviously, two great mates, having grown up both in Delhi, on the west side of Delhi, and then played through the ranks together for both Delhi and for India. And, a nice little bit of banter between the two. Kohli hits him for a six, gives him a little bit of stick. Ishant gets him a couple of balls later, kind of almost sort of hit barges him in a kind of friendly manner. And it was good to see a smile from Kohli, although he'd just been dismissed too. So it's great to see that side of him. And not only is the strike rate question out the window, but his kind of attitude as well. I think a lot of people who may not have been the biggest Virat Kohli fans, and yes, there's not a lot of them in India, but just generally are kind of warming to him a little bit now as well, aren't they?
Indeed. It's very rare that Virat Kohli would let out a smile after getting out, but that's what Ishant Sharma made happen. And because they've been mates for the longest time and have played a lot of cricket together. In fact, it was Ishant Sharma who broke the news of Virat Kohli's making it to the Indian team for the first time to him. So that camaraderie has lasted for a while now. And even when Virat Kohli was a captain, And those overseas wins, Ishant Sharma had a huge role to play. He'd play that containing role really well, and that's why the other bowlers could flourish. He'd create pressure from one end. So that chemistry was evident in the game against the Delhi Capitals. But otherwise as well, the India supporters, you could be supporting any team as Indian fans, but as Indian fans, in fact, you would want Virat Kohli to do well. You'd remember the 2022 World Cup and how important Virat Kohli was for that campaign, particularly the game against Pakistan. That almost was a miraculous performance because most fans had given up hope, and then Virat Kohli, like a man possessed, helped India cross the line. So you'd want Virat Kohli to perform well in the West Indies and the US as well, and him striking form and also getting those runs at a quick pace, particularly in the middle overs, is very important from India's point of view as well. Although, talking about the Indian fans' perspective, now as an RCB fan, of course, you'd want RCB to make it to the playoffs, but Indian fans who are not RCB fans wouldn't really want to see that happen because, unlike England, Indian players cannot leave the IPL midway. So you'd want the players to spend some time together, spend some time in the US together before US and the West Indies together before the campaign kicks off. So that dilemma as well is pretty important.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point. I mean, I'm not sure with players like Kohli if it makes that much difference or not, such as the experience level that he's got. But look, let's talk about Sunrisers Hyderabad, because if you were just watching the IPL as a casual, as somebody maybe in a different country outside of India, you'd see the headlines, you would have seen their record-breaking feats, and you'd probably say they've been the team of the season, but the table suggests otherwise. They're in fourth position. They do have a game in hand over a lot of the sides around them, so they've got 2 games remaining. If they win one of them, they're on 14 points. If they win one of them, they're probably through to the playoffs, which is fine, but it hasn't been an easy road for them to get there. They either win really, really big, or they, sort of bat second, and most of the time when they batted second, apart from that blitz in 9.4 overs, they've struggled a little bit. Even against the Mumbai Indians, actually batting first, they were putting a little bit of pressure. There have been certain games where they've just not been able to quite flourish in that same way, particularly at the top of the order through Travis Head and Abhishek Sharma, and then setting that platform, etc. It's been a weird one, hasn't it? Because as I say, a lot of people will just see the headlines and say, yeah, surely team of the season, but they haven't quite been like that, have they? Throughout the whole campaign, they've not been consistent enough.
Absolutely, they've managed some wins that have created headlines. The game against Royal Challengers Bangalore, the game against LSG most recently. But otherwise, there have also been some massive losses. And like you mentioned, those losses have come when they've gone for the chase. So the key in this case is if the opponent is able to send back their top order early, the middle order, when the platform is not given to them, they've somehow not managed to step up. But when the platform gets provided, then they come to their own. And we have to talk about that LSG game and all that followed afterwards, because KL Rahul as well got to hear a lot from his owner, Mr. Goenka. And then after that, there was a lot that happened on the social media. There was a lot of criticism, a lot of flag that the owner faced because of that. But seems like all's well for now, because he was invited for a dinner and the two hugged and it's all hunky-dory now. But what a game did we get to witness with that KL Rahul scoring 27 from 33. And then there were these openers for SRH that completed the game in 9.4 overs. Almost every second ball was hammered for a boundary. Crazy spectacle. They've managed to create headlines. Yeah,
it was Krunal Pandya as well, wasn't it? That partnership between himself and KL Rahul. At that point, I mean, Krunal was going at just over a run of ball, so he was like the sort of more attacking partner. But it was strange because it looked like a difficult wicket, didn't it? The way they were playing, they made it look like it was really difficult conditions to bat in, and they're sort of grinding out a total here. And then all of a sudden, 9.4 overs, they chased down 167 or whatever it was, 164, I think. And so one or the other. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, look, they're scoring 100 odd in the power play. They've done that a couple of times. 125 was the record that they got a few games ago. It's just mad. It's crazy. And let's talk about the owner of the LSG. So Mr. Goenka goes out on the outfield, for those of you who may not have seen the video, and is sort of waving his arms quite furiously at KL Rahul, and KL's just sort of taking it. Really, he's taking that flack from this guy who obviously is technically his boss, but then KL Rahul is a current Indian cricketer. He's the captain of the franchise. He deserves a bit more respect than to be flogged in public like that, because even the great coaches of all time, even when there's been a catastrophic performance by their team, they, doing it publicly, it makes no sense. There's no class in that. And he's not even a coach. He's not even a cricket guy. He's not a former player or anything like that. Even if he was, it would still be inexcusable. The fact he's a businessman, he's an owner, it just shows you, A, how much power these owners have in the IPL over decision making, and how they feel that this is their toy. They can do with it as they please. They don't necessarily run it as a cricket team. They want that instant success because they want the money, they want the glory, they want this, they want that, they want it now. And in the corporate world, yes, you can pull people into a meeting, and there are CEOs who deal with things in that way. They're not necessarily people kind of managers as such, but they get shit done, and they want to get shit done quickly. And if it's not getting done, they fire people. You can't do that in the IPL, especially to somebody like KL Rahul. So look, I'm the first one to give KL Rahul stick when he plays innings like that, 27 from 33, and he's done that quite often. But this guy, Goenka, he's got form, hasn't he? Because he was part of the ownership of the rising Pune Super Giants.
Yeah.
And he removed MS Dhoni as captain after the first season. I mean, he's got no sense anyway, as it is, cricket-wise, if he's going to do something like that and put Steve Smith in. Yes, they made the playoffs and all that in that second season, but
finals.
Yeah, the
Lost
final.
by
They
one
made, yeah. But it wasn't simply because of that decision. I mean, they still had Dhoni in there as one of the senior decision makers of that side. But it's just that ego thing. Sacking somebody like an MS Dhoni back then, when he was even more, he was still a current India player, and it's just mad. It's absolutely crazy. So they just treat it as their toy, and I just thought it was just reeked of absolutely no class whatsoever. So it doesn't do any favors to LSG as a brand and as a franchise as well, because it's very unfashionable as it is. They came into the IPL the first season, they had the worst kit ever. They just had nothing really kind of snazzy and headline grabbing about them. KL Rahul might not be the most inspiring captain, and he's a very quietly spoken guy, and class player, of course, but they just didn't have that, and they haven't managed to grab the general public's kind of affection. If you're not from Lucknow, you're not really going to care what happens to Lucknow Super Giants. I mean, it's one of those where if you've got nothing invested in Lucknow, and sorry if this sounds harsh, but your worst nightmare would be like the Lucknow Super Giants against, the Punjab Kings or the Sunrisers Hyderabad in the final three of the, just three unfashionable teams, but Lucknow being probably the most unfashionable out of all those teams in the IPL, even more so than somebody like Punjab, because at least with Punjab, they've had these stars over the years. They've got Priti Zinta, and all that kind of stuff going for them. Whereas with Lucknow, it's this, and now the owners, basically come out and made himself look like a bit of a twat. So that's all I got to say on that. I mean, I don't know if you've got any different points of view, but you shouldn't be flogging your captain in public like that.
I guess publicly, that's the most important point, because if we remember the first season as well, and I've seen fans actually talk about RCB, how RCB owners have been very cooperative. But that's not always been the case, because the very first season, when Vijay Mallya, of course, owned the RCB and Rahul Dravid was the captain, there were remarks being made in public as to how he wanted things differently, how even at the auctions, there were things that happened because he insisted on it, and how he wanted changes, and how IPL at the end of the day was about results. And it wasn't just about giving chance to youngsters and stuff like that, all the good things that were earlier being talked about. So the owners do get involved. In case of Mr. Sanjeev Goenka, before this and before the RPS, the team and of course, you do not like RPS, I'm aware of that. No part of the franchise appeal to you. But coming back to Mr. Sanjeev Goenka, so in his case, he wouldn't get involved. He wouldn't be seen in the stands at all times or very animated. But this time around, probably it got way too much for him. Having said that, the sort of conversation that happened, and that happened in public, that would always be incorrect, that would always draw flag, like it rightly did. Because at the end of the day, KL Rahul is a senior Indian cricketer, and you cannot treat anybody like that, more so publicly. Whatever conversations, whatever pointers you have, maybe you can convey that to him in person, not in front of hundreds of cameras, including the phone cameras that were capturing that moment. And very dignified of KL Rahul to actually absorb all of that. But having made some very varied arguments on the subject. Now, if you remember 2022 season as well, they'd made it to the playoffs like they did in the last season as well. And the game against RCB, KL Rahul was obviously a part of the chase on that occasion. And his innings at the end of the day seemed too little for the team to win. And even when he tried to step on the accelerator, by then it was too late, around the 16th over. And in doing so, he got out, and eventually LSG fell short and were eliminated of the playoffs. Eliminated, and you could see Gautam Gambhir's expressions, and he was absolutely livid with that performance. So that has been a refrain with KL Rahul, and assessing the wicket, maybe he would have assisted differently. But then from the very same team, you had Ayush Badoni and Marcus Stoinis stitching a 99-run stand for some 50 deliveries. So the wicket apparently didn't change that much during the mid innings break. It probably changed after the first 10 overs, because clearly two players from his own team could go big in the last 10 overs.
Let's talk Delhi. Let's move on from LSG and look, their owner. We've seen him, Bud Jindal, waving around his arms and things in that match against Rajasthan Royals. Another one we kind of see a little bit more of as the years have gone on, don't we? In the stands and getting a bit more involved, enjoying the limelight a little bit more. I mean, his side, again, they've left it late. They're almost out of it. Similar to RCB, they need to win and hope all of the results go perfectly for them. They're just behind RCB in the current table. So one game remaining, 12 points. Their net run rate slightly worse than RCB's. So they need to win big in their final match against LSG, which takes place today, actually, in a couple of hours' time from when we're talking, and hope that a whole sequence of other results go in their favour too. It looks highly unlikely.
Yeah.
I suppose the most heartwarming thing from Delhi's point of view is Rishabh Pant and him coming back and captaining the side and being able to play a full season after that horrific crash. We've talked about it before, but that seems to have sort of got a lot more neutrals rooting for Delhi, hasn't it?
Yeah. Something that Delhi needed dearly over the seasons, because they wouldn't get a lot of support. But yeah, Rishabh Pant coming back, scoring runs, being handed one match ban, and his absence clearly making a difference, at least as a batter, because he could give you those runs in the middle order. Akshar Patel, the skipper, stepping up with the bat. But otherwise, they've lacked that consistency. David Warner got injured in between, but on either side of that injury, he couldn't score a lot of runs. Prithvi Shaw was tried, again inconsistent. And now, of course, Tristan Stubbs, he did score quick fire runs in the middle order for the team, and so did Rishabh Pant. But otherwise, not as many. Not other. I mean, we didn't see other batters stepping up as much. And of course, at the top, Jake Fraser McGurk making a huge contribution, and that's the reason we are still talking about Delhi being in some sort of contention for the playoffs. On the bowling front, Andrik Nortje struggling so much with his consistency, and Kuldeep Yadav, not really the same player that he was in the last two seasons, because this time around teams have taken him on. He has been pretty expensive, although he's managed to get those wickets. So all in all, probably lacking the consistency, and somehow I think they wouldn't make it to the playoffs, because there are other contenders with stronger contention. So Delhi Capitals, it must be it for them.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way, but look, they're playing at home, and a chance for them to at least end of the season on a high and give themselves an outside chance, I suppose, of making that final four. Big question then, moving on from Rishabh Pant and kind of continuing on that theme, has Sanju Samson done enough, do you think, to warrant a place as India's keeper in that starting 11 come the T20 World Cup, or do you think Rishabh Pant will don the gloves?
it's left me wondering, because we look at the combination beyond the contributions made by the player in the IPL, because they've both done well, scored over 400 runs. But beyond that, Rishabh Pant fits in as a finisher or in the middle order. Sanju Samson, bulk of the scoring that he's done in the top order, and that's where he flourishes. India has tried him as a finisher, but that has not really worked out. And in the format, in fact, in T20Is, it's neither Rishabh nor Sanju who boast of great past records. In fact, even Sanju Samson, up until the previous year's World Cup, he did string together some consistent performances, but in the ODI format, not in the T20I. So, in a way, they're both as good as each other. But in terms of the combination, Rishabh Pant brings that left-handed option, and he fits in the low middle order or the middle order. Where do we have space for Sanju Samson if we are to fit him in the top order where he actually thrives? Because even for the Rajasthan Royals, when he's been introduced very late, he's not had the same impact. So introduced very late in terms of partnerships at the top of the order, strong opening partnership, and Sanju being introduced late. What about you?
Yeah,
Where do you see the two?
it's an interesting question. I think Sanju Samson has probably done enough, hasn't he? Because he's had one of those seasons which is
Yeah.
quite out of the ordinary for him, because he usually starts well, just like Rajasthan Royals, and then fizzles away. And it usually coincides with his form, their sort of dip as a team as well, doesn't it? So it shows how crucial he is to the team. I guess the other questions that India have got are, and this was interesting actually, Matthew Hayden, who's working out there on the IPL and the commentary team, was talking about the combinations at the top of the order and suggesting that Kohli should open because, obviously he's orange cap holder. That's where he's batting for RCB. He's best used in those power play overs because he can play proper shots and find the gaps. And somebody like Jaiswal for the left hand, right hand, Suryakumar Yadav at 3, he was suggesting, and Rohit Sharma at 4, which, he's done it before. He's won a T20 World Cup batting in the middle order at 5 and 6. Different player now, of course, having opened for India in all formats for such a long time. It's an option, though, isn't it?
Isn't Rohit Sharma best during the power plays because of the fielding restrictions? He tries to make.
He's a 6-hitter, though. He's a 6-hitter, isn't he? Yeah. Kohli, I know Kohli's got 33 sixes or whatever it is this season. Yeah. On those kind of pitches in the Caribbean, it's not necessarily his game. Whereas Rohit Sharma has got more sixes than anyone across international cricket for India. I think he's got more than Sehwag now across all formats. Yeah. So he can offer you something a little bit different, whereas Kohli's more of a correct player, isn't he? He plays along the floor, he plays through the gaps, he drives, he flicks. It's all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Look, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, but it's another option, isn't it? Because I think Kohli batting at 3 wastes Kohli in your side. I know, look, there could be like 0 for 1 or something, and he could just come in the power play anyway. So then that problem is kind of solved, but you don't want to be a wicket down just so you can get Kohli in during the power play. And then Suryakumar Yadav, I know he's been batting a little bit lower now in the last couple of years, down at number 4, even for India and Mumbai Indians. I still think his best position is number 3 in T20 cricket. Just give him as many balls as you can. And then you've got Rohit Sharma to come in and, if he doesn't feel like the situation is right for him to come in, he can be a floating player, only 4-5, still a great captain. It's just another option, and it could solve that issue of who do you open with when Kohli's batting so well at the top of the order. So I've always said, if Kohli plays T20 international cricket, he needs to be opening the batting.
Yeah, you maintain that.
Is who should bat with him, and you can't put Jaiswal down the order now. So if Jaiswal plays, he opens, and then maybe Rohit has to give way. That could be it. Worst case scenario, Surya could still continue at 4, and Rohit could just come in at 3. That could be another way around it. India have done it previously, haven't they? Sourav Ganguly and Sachin Tendulkar was the most successful partnership in the history of ODI cricket. Sehwag comes in and Ganguly drops to 3. There's no other choice. I know there was a period where Tendulkar dropped to 4, and it was Sehwag and Ganguly. But you look at the 2003 World Cup, where India was so successful. It was such an opening with Sehwag, Ganguly at 3. All 3 of them had a great tournament. So it can work. I know it's a slightly different format, but it can work. So watch this space. I don't think it's done and dusted as far as the batting order is concerned for India going into that. And talking of Rohit and some of these other guys, Mumbai Indians out of the competition. That was confirmed. They were never going to make it anyway, but it's been officially confirmed in the last week. Indian cricket fans, though, would be hoping that they at least finish with a bit of a flourish, because they've got 4 key players in that side, in Rohit, in Hardik Pandya, in Suryakumar Yadav, and Jasprit Bumrah. Bumrah, I don't think we need to worry about.
Yeah.
He's just been fabulous this season, as always. Sky is in some form now. The other 2, though, that's a concern.
Yeah, absolutely. More so with Rohit Sharma. He had a great start to the season. Up until that century, he was looking in control. But somehow since then, one is getting that deja vu, and one is being reminded of that 2022 edition of the T20 World Cup, wherein Rohit would try things, but they just not work out for him. It's not like he's not trying to attack the balls. He is, because one, the scoring rate has been so high in this IPL. Second, he's an opener. He's got that fielding restriction to make the most out of. But somehow those runs have not come, and there've been some very ugly looking dismissals as well. So that's a serious cause of concern. Having said that, Rohit for the past 5 years had been struggling in the IPL, but somehow would manage to do well for India, beat 50 overs format or T20Is. But again, considering that recent slump, Indian fans are concerned because runs are just not coming out of Rohit's bat. So he'd need that confidence going ahead. And Suryakumar Yadav, with that century, of course, he issued a reminder as to how he can still, on his day, turn games in their entirety. But again, after that century as well, there have been some issues. But again, and now we talk about Hardik Pandya. So there have been games in which Hardik Pandya has done well with the ball, has picked up 3 wickets. In fact, there was a period of 3 games during which he picked up 7 wickets, including a 3-wicket haul in one of the games. But on either side of it, he's neither been consistent on bowling front nor with the bat. Now, for Gujarat Titans, he'd be seen playing that responsible role at number 4. But with Mumbai Indians, he's always been a part of their engine room. So average might not really be high when featuring for Mumbai Indians, but strike rate would be really high. This season, there have been some cameos, but not really sublime Hardik. We've not got to see that sublime Hardik or Hardik at his best. So that really presents a lot of questions for the Indian team. And Mumbai Indian struggles cannot be seen in isolation. From Indian fans' point of view as well, it's been a cause of concern. Those 3 players in particular, maybe Sky, because of how important he was for India's fortunes last time around, the Indian fans would want more out of him because he was the one doing bulk of the scoring last time.
He was indeed, yeah. But his side, as we mentioned, near the bottom of the table, only off the bottom thanks to the Punjab Kings, who, what's it been, 11 years consistently, they've not made the playoffs. They only made 2 playoffs ever, and one of them was in the first season ever, wasn't it?
2014.
Yeah, and then 14.
And they made it to the finals,
Yeah, so it's been a decade since they made the playoffs. And apart from that 2014, you've got to go way back to 2008. So something's clearly not working there. Doesn't matter if they're called the Kings 11 or the Punjab Kings, still, making the foot of the table their own, really, over the last few years or so. Right, that's all we've got time for on this episode of India on Cricket 8. Remember, do like and subscribe to these pages that you're watching us on at the moment on Facebook or YouTube. Whether you're listening to us on a podcast feed as well, remember to hit that like and subscribe button. A shout out to Shera, who says Rohit likes punt. I guess that matters. That may well matter in selection ahead of that T20 World Cup. And shout out to Sandeep Tandon as well, who says CSK will win the IPL. Well, we've certainly got a good chance, and might be a good chance for Dhoni to call it a day, having won another trophy with his side. Long way to go, though, still. Remember, the next time we talk to you, we will have figured out who's going to be making those top 4 positions and who's going to be heading into the playoffs. Massive week coming up for the rest of this week and into next week when the playoffs begin. We'll be with you with all the latest next week on our episode. But for now, Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.